Inosanto. And there he is, humble yet powerful. And Jerry Beasley interviews him throughout the book. Present day, or modern day, Jeet Kune Do exists because of the efforts of Dan Inosanto. He is, without a doubt, the guiding force in JKD. With the tape recorder in hand, Jerry Beasley began to ask Dan a series of questions. Here he shares his answers. He started working with Bruce Lee in 1964. He met him through Ed Parker at the first International Karate Championships. After the internationals, Dan played around with him for about 2 months before he went back to it. It was either Oakland or Seattle at that time. And he was his dummy for different demonstrations at a theatre in Los Angeles and also in San Francisco. That was his introduction to Bruce. He flew Dan up to San Francisco to do some more demonstrations. And while Dan was demonstrating or being the fall guy, he takes the punches and throws, Bruce Lee started training him and he started to like it. At that time he was under Ed Parker, that was his teacher, Kempo Karate teacher, who Dan enjoyed being under. And he so started to correspond with Bruce. And every chance he'd get, he'd fly up to Oakland to train under him, because if he had moved to Oakland, Bruce Lee had moved to Oakland. So his training with Bruce went all the way from 1964 to the later part of 1970, when he left the hometown to do movies. And in 1967 he was made an instructor by Bruce Lee to teach his Chinatown school in Los Angeles. When he went to Hong Kong, his training wasn't as steady because Bruce Lee was making pictures. But he went back again for a period, and he believes it was about 6 weeks. He was doing a picture, Bruce Lee was doing a picture at the same time, to update his training with Bruce Lee. Jerry Beasley. When did he first coin the term Jeet Kune Do? Dan Inosanto. Jeet Kune Do was probably coined in 1967. He'd have to read his own book, but he believes he's checked the book since 1967. He was just driving by in a car and said that he believed to stop the attack and intercept was high combat. So he said Jeet Kune Do, the way of intercepting people. Jeet Kune Do was also a Chinese form, but he didn't think Bruce took a name from that form. There was one called Kune Do. He learned it from another Chinese guy where he learned another style of kick. What type of workouts and such did Bruce get involved in? And he goes through that. Now he started originally in Wing Chun, asked Jerry Beasley. Yeah, his first method was really Tai Chi Chuan, which he learned from his father. He studied Wing Chun and he trained under 3 people at a time. Yip Man, who was actually the head instructor, Bill Chun, and Wong Shung Myong. And he then studied under a man named Shu, who taught him a northern system that employed many types of kicks. Low kicks, middle range kicks, sort of like wushu type hooking kicks and things of that nature. He learned a lot of that. Going back in time to the late 1960s when they first came out with the article in Black Belt magazine, there seemed to be a negative attitude toward Bruce Lee. Dan Inosanto. Yeah, there was, because Bruce was trying to share something with people, and you can't break that ground with people when you taught a certain way and they don't go against tradition. Our sports world is full of that. Hank Massetti, a guy who was criticised for doing jump shots and shooting one hand, was criticised because they said he had to be balanced. The first people to start using fiberglass poles were laughed at because aluminium poles were used in pole vaulting. Then when they started to go up to 16 feet and 17 feet and 18 feet, no one laughed. Perry O'Brien ran into the same thing Bruce ran into. He changed the method of shot putting, and when he first started with the method, the traditionalists laughed. But no one laughed when his ball went over 60 feet, because at that time 60 feet was a heck of a good throw. To this day, we still sort of use the O'Brien method. Bruce wasn't well liked because what he was saying to people, the traditionalists didn't want. One thing that tournament karate brought into the world, so Dan Inosanto thought, was that karate guys could no longer put these guys in these stances and march them up and down the floor. they had to show something because the school was on the line with its reputation, and they had to do well in tournaments. Tournaments, in Dan's opinion, did a lot of good because they stopped the traditionalists from going up and down and sitting in different stances and punching like that, which is part of the training. Now Bruce said that it's good, but sometimes the way you punch was not the way you start punching. He made a prediction he thought was pretty good. He said, you watch that, these people right now in point style are going to full contact karate, and they will realise that they will not be able to punch like they do in their katas and their 1 and 2 step sparring. They will go to a boxing trainer to get their hands right. And at that time, they thought, no, it's not possible. But now that he saw that all the better fighters use the boxing training, which Bruce predicted they would do, and they put their hands up. To this day, people say full contact karate. Yeah, we use the jab and the hook and the cross, which really come from boxing, not from karate. But at that time, they would have laughed. You can remember a time when people said about them, that's not kung fu. They have boxing gloves on. And look, there's no horse stance. They're moving around like boxers. That's stupid. They're not even punching correctly. Because people were used to seeing what, for that time period, was the standard. And he thinks that Bruce Lee ran into a lot of jealousy. Anybody who gets up their head is bound to be envied. Take Jerry Lewis, for example. Jerry Lewis was good. There's no doubt about it. In Dan's opinion, he would rank him as one of the greatest full contact fighters in the history of America. A lot of people are very jealous. 1, he was good looking. 2, he had good build. And 3, he was a good fighter. So everyone seemed so down, right? Because a lot of people who don't like a person to get ahead, and they don't want a person to get too popular. So in that respect, it was the same with Bruce. He was unpopular. And the interview continues. Here is some stills from the movie Game of Death, with Bruce Lee choking out Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and here's Bruce Lee up against Bob Wall beneath the dragon. This guy took a lot of blows, kicks in the nuts, etc. because of the realism, right? That guy could handle all that sort of stuff. And the interview continues with Dan Inosanto. Like Larry Hartsell. During Beasley's interview with him. Figure 11, Kali practiced by Dick Harrell, that's it, Filipino martial arts, stick fight. And Larry Hartsell right at Jeet Kune Do seminar. The interview continues. And then he has an interview with Jerry Lewis. And he's asking him, where did you first meet Bruce Lee, etc. They both trained together between 1968 and 69 until something happened and they parted ways. They didn't associate with each other anymore. Because here it says basically he went to the International Karate Championships in 1969 in Long Beach. He was seated at ringside. That particular morning when he came in there to sign up for the fight after he'd gone through eliminations, they handed him this application. He never used to fill out those applications to fight in the tournaments, so he said, screw them. Screw those applications. They still handed him the application with all this nonsense stuff on it, like what sex you are, what are you, who's your instructor, what rank are you, what school are you from. And Joe Louis thought, hey man, I've got on a black belt, you can still got a black belt on, and you've got my $5, you got my money, right? So just let me fight. He always put his name on the applications and signed it, and that's it. He wouldn't give them all the information. To him, it was just no one's business who was an instructor. Instructor was what school he was from or what rank he was. But that particular day, they insisted that he fill it out. He put down his instructor was John Karab, because John Karab was the guy who taught him how to spar. So he put Okinawa Te as the style. He never thought of putting Bruce Lee as his instructor, or Jeet Kune Do as his style. Bruce would ask him to go out and tell people that he was his instructor, but he wouldn't do it, just to give him some publicity, because that was what he wanted. He guessed we were both a little childish. This is Joe Louis. Thought they were both a little childish back then. Well, that night he got up there to fight and he won the Grand Championship. Just before the match, the announcer on the microphone says Joe Louis's instructor, John Karab, is style Okinawa Te. They had never done that at a tournament before. Read all that stuff off. Well, he didn't think anything of it. He found out later through the grapevine that it really pissed Bruce Lee off, that it just blew him away. And he considered him a punk after that. Joe Louis a punk after that. Those were his exact words. He thought that was real low down and punkish, childish of him. And he thought, why did he take what that announcer said as an attack against him? That's what Joe Louis thought. He could never put that together, and he didn't know how to talk back in those days of thinking in a socially mature manner. So all he could do was either get real pissed off and attack somebody, or just turn around and walk away. We were still friends because he wouldn't tell me he was mad because of that. Joe Louis at the time was married, and Bruce and him were seeing each other quite a bit socially. So his wife went over there to fix his hair one time. She was going to streak his hair. She was always trying to separate Joe Louis from all his friends, all of them, because she wanted him all to herself. So she would always conjure, make up stories to separate them all. Well, he didn't figure that out until it was too late. She came back from fixing Bruce's hair and said he had made a pass at her. Her description of the incident was a little more detailed, or probably exaggerated, than that. It had been years, and he can't fully remember it, but it pissed him off. Joe Louis pissed Joe Louis off. He just got back from a photo session. He was wearing a suit and tie, so he went up to Bruce Lee's house and knocked on the door because he partly wanted to kick his ass. Another part of him said to be cool, be a gentleman. He had mixed feelings about it. Anyway, he knocked on the door. Linda Lee, Bruce's wife at the time, answered the door and she called Bruce. Bruce came to the door and opened it. I just talked to him to the screen, Joe Louis states. He said, I want to talk to you. So he said to Bruce Lee. He said, yeah, what about? He said, well, my wife told me that you made a pass at him. Bruce Lee just acted like he was shocked, like it was ridiculous. He said, Linda, come here. Tell Linda what you just said, Joe. Then Joe Louis started feeling a fool, like, hey, I didn't expect that reaction. He didn't expect it from Bruce. He thought he would get pissed and out the door and smack him over, have a fight, take it one-on-one, right, man to man, and they would have it out, basically. But no, they both, Linda and Bruce, told him to take off, and he took off and never saw him again. So that ended their relationship. In other words, with the help of the announcer at the karate tournament, and with the help of his wife, his relationship with Bruce Lee was quickly ended because of that, what was said, and that problem, the exaggeration, the accusation of the wife, right? Did he try to make a move on him? He had a phone conversation with Bruce Lee one time after that, and he basically called him a punk, and that's when he told him they'd not given him credit for being his instructor. Joe Louis guessed the whole Bruce Lee group turned against him, Joe Louis, by then. After Bruce Lee died, he just stayed out of the picture. Jerry Beasley asks, with respect to him, to Bruce Lee? Joe Louis, yeah, I just didn't want my name associated with his anymore. I felt like he was who he was doing his thing, and I was who I was, and didn't want to lean on him, and I didn't want him to lean on me. After he died, Joe Louis heard a film producer in Hollywood say his death was like a $2 million publicity campaign, and Warner Brothers milked it for all it was worth. All those stories of junk coming up about him dying by a delayed death touch or dim mark, and all that stuff was all made up. It's all baloney. It's all nonsense. And he believed that he didn't think there was anyone in Hong Kong at the time who could have nailed him with a punch. Anyway, Kung Fu standards, he was a god. By Kung Fu standards, he was a god. He was a superior master. Joe Louis always tried to protect Bruce behind his back. When he was alive, people put him down. As soon as he died, everybody started talking good about him. Oh yeah, I knew Bruce Lee. Oh yeah, Bruce Lee and I were friends. He's my best friend. And those who talked good when he was still alive switched on him while he died. When he died, yeah, the Judas. They started putting him down. Joe Louis never understood that. He always remained consistent. If he felt that he couldn't afford to tell the truth, he'd just keep his mouth shut. Like a lot of times when he would be asked in interviews whether Bruce Lee was his instructor, he would always say no. He just didn't want to deal with it because he knew that he's going to get into all these issues that he didn't want to talk about. For a while, people would ask him, Joe Louis, how Bruce would rate as a fighter. Well, Joe Louis would say, I'm a fighter. He was a fighter, so he could make evaluations objectively. Even so, whenever he would say something about Bruce that someone didn't like, personality would be read into it. And Joe Louis says, if you don't want the truth, don't ask for it. Jerry Beasley, do you feel like he showed you a lot about fighting? Joe Louis, yeah, he was very good. He was a very good teacher. He had hundreds of books in all the different dialects of Chinese, of all the fighting arts that he had read about. He read about wrestling and he read about boxing. He had hundreds of boxing manuals, Western boxing, and he had dozens and dozens of films on fighters. They both used to sit down and analyse each film. Some of their favourites were Muhammad Ali, Jack Dempsey, those types. They would study the strategies of different fighters on film, and then they would go to tournaments and watch guys fight, and they would analyse them together. At times, Joe Louis felt like the test tube. He would go out and get in the street fight, or he'd go out in a tournament and he'd prove whether it worked or not. You can't have a better setup than that. They would both, him and Bruce Lee, would watch boxing on TV and do the same thing. So it's like research. He was a research centre. So it's like a research centre, like research laboratory. And he thought it was the greatest life that ever existed. Joe Louis states he didn't think there was ever anything like it before or ever will be again.